thanks again for everyone participating and taking some time out of their schedule. I know everyone's busy, so thank you. What's our agenda? So we're going to cover what is a sales discovery meeting. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to prepare for these meetings, how to open the meeting, how to lead a discovery conversation. Then I'm going to get into something I call vision engineering, and then how to capture the next steps, when and how to close the meeting, and then most importantly, where the real money is made, how to follow up on your successful sales meetings or discovery calls. So with that, I'll jump right in here. So what is a discovery meeting? The purpose of a discovery meeting is really to learn about your clients' challenges, their issues, and their opportunities. We want to uncover what they need to accomplish and to skillfully begin to align your solutions and products to those priorities. So that's really what our goal is every time is to uncover their issues and align to their priorities. Once we've uncovered a need, what we perceive as a need, then we'll want to qualify that need, and that's where our opportunities will come from. So a discovery meeting is generally a first meeting. It may be a first face-to-face meeting. It can be done over the phone or any other setting, but it's really that first detailed conversation where you're going to get a chance to really ask open-ended questions and really delve into your prospect's business. I'm going to use the expression solutions today. It's something I'm not really comfortable with, but since a lot of us are solution or service-based companies and some of us are product-based companies, I'm going to use the word solution, so I hope that doesn't bother you like sometimes it bothers me. All right, so the first step in leading a successful discovery meeting happens before the meeting ever starts. That is the preparation phase. So, the first thing that you're going to want to do, if the meeting was set, particularly if the meeting was set by someone else other than yourself, maybe you use a firm like ours that is an outsourced lead generation firm. Maybe you've got an internal inside sales team. Maybe there's just another department within the business that tends to vet new opportunities as they come through the door, or new interests as they come through the door. You'll want to review those notes. Just make sure you have a good understanding of what that initial conversation was about, what the prospect was expressing interest in, and make sure you're just really tight on that. You don't want to cover old ground that's already been handled by someone else. That's frustrating to a prospect. They've got a limited amount of time, and you have limited amount of time with them, so you want to pick up where the last conversation left off. Then you're going to research the company. So I suggest that you read through the company's website. You're going to look for information about the leadership team. You're going to look for information about the products they sell and who they sell them to. You should have a basic understanding of this before the meeting. Don't make assumptions. That can be very dangerous. So do your research. If there's an investor section on your prospect's website, go there. A lot of times there will be a quarterly report or an annual report included on the investor section. There's lots of great information in that report. What I like to do is generally those reports will include a letter from the CEO or from the president or the chairman of the board, the top leader in the company. And in that letter, it's usually short. It's usually a page or two, or usually not much longer than that. But that usually gives some indication about what the priorities are for the business, what the near to mid-term strategies are for the business. So that'll give us an indication of what markets they're trying to pursue. Maybe what solutions they're working on building to meet needs in the marketplace. There's really great information there, so I always want to try to read that if I can, and if it's available. Then you're going to research the attendees. So use the company website, use social media platforms like LinkedIn and others to research who the people are in the meeting. Know their titles, know how long they've worked at the company, and know where they've worked before. You're looking to see if you have any common connections or any sort of common ground that you can leverage to build rapport quickly in those first few minutes of the meeting. One thing that a lot of people don't ever talk about is when you're researching those attendees, keep a mindful eye on whether or not who in that group, who in that meeting, which of those attendees might have a conflict with you, might be looking for, might be resistant to accepting your solution when you propose it. So look, this is often some personal matter. Maybe they stand to lose something either politically within the organization, or maybe they stand to lose something personally, like their job is going to get harder. So look for the people that might resist your message, and just make sure that you have an eye on who they are and you're prepared to handle those objections. The more you can be prepared for that before you go into the meeting, the more successful your meeting is going to be. And then finally, we're going to spend a lot of time, the meat of this presentation, we're talking about targeted questions. So what really separates the good salespeople from the great salespeople is the way that they prepare for meetings and preparing great questions and being able to competently ask those questions and start great conversations with prospects. So we're going to talk a little bit about that now. So actually, we'll get to it in another slide or two. So start on time. So opening the meeting, start the meeting on time. If you're going to be late for the meeting, as soon as you know that you're not going to be there when the meeting starts, let them know. If that's 2 hours before, let them know. If it's 10 minutes before, let them know. As soon as you're certain that you're not going to make it on time, I always recommend you let the prospect know. They're busy. They've got a lot of work to do, and wasting their time is not a great way to start the relationship. If they can stay at their desk and work on something for another 10 minutes before they come down to meet you, they'll appreciate that, and you'll earn some credibility points with them by respecting them. Check for time. I want to confirm that we've got until 2 o'clock today. Is that what everyone has on their schedule? Is everyone okay with that? You want to ask that question at the beginning of the meeting. A little friendly chat in the beginning is great before you jump straight into the agenda. But I would also suggest that you not spend too much time chit-chatting. People are busy. You've got a lot that you want to cover. So read the body language in the room. So once you confirm that you've got the amount of time that you were prepared for, try to get to know people a little bit while people are moving into the room and you're kind of getting yourself organized. Maybe you're setting up your projector if you're using a slide deck, which I don't always recommend for a first meeting, but that's a different discussion. Then you're going to start the meeting by thanking everyone for their time. You're going to outline your objectives and you're going to cover your agenda. If you're using slides, make sure you've got an agenda slide. This will put everyone at ease, knowing that you are eventually going to get to your solution, and that'll make sense as we get a little bit later into this conversation. But I'm going to coach you to resist the temptation to sell up front and spend at least the first half to 2/3 of the meeting asking questions and having conversations and uncovering needs, and just resisting that temptation that all salespeople have to start pitching. We want to hold ourselves back for a while. So when we cover an agenda, we let them know we're going to have a conversation here, and then we'll eventually talk about our solution. They know that it's coming, so their anxiety level about that can go down, and they'll give you a little bit more time to keep having those that conversation if it's rich. If someone else has scheduled that meeting for you, I also like to remind them at that point that you've met with that person. So, hey, I know everyone met with Dave, and he set this meeting up for us. I just want you to know I spoke with Dave after your conversation. He and I reviewed his notes from your call, and I'm completely up to speed with what you shared with him earlier. Just letting everyone know that they don't have to cover that ground again with you. Then you're going to introduce yourself. I want you to say really high level at this point in the call or in the meeting, whether it's on the phone or face-to-face. You're going to get to the details of your company and your solution later. I want you to stay high level here. Just stick to the basics, and I'll give you an example of how I like to start meetings, I think on the next slide. And then you're going to go around the table. This is another really important step that I would encourage you not to miss. So stop and ask everyone, what their name is, what their title is, what their role, and what their responsibilities are. Make good notes. Know who's in the meeting. Know who's in your meeting. I'll tell you a quick side story that taught me this lesson. Years ago, I was presenting to a group of people at a large company. It was a big demo presentation. I probably had 10 people in the room. I was anxious to get started. I had a limited amount of time, but I needed to go around the room because I wanted to make sure I knew who was in the room. By the time I got to the end, the last person to introduce themselves was actually the incumbent solution provider and a competitor. Someone in the group had invited my competition into the sales meeting. So that was great information to have. That wouldn't have come up if I hadn't taken the time to go around and make sure I knew who was in the room with me. That obviously changed the way that I presented some things. It also just made me more aware of how I positioned myself against the competition. So that really paid off for me, and it could have been very embarrassing if I had found that out later on in the call or afterwards. So always go around the table. Then you're going to review your agenda and get started. Here's how I like to open meetings. Again, we want to stay really high level, and we're going to try to quickly transition out of this into talking about your prospect's business. So I like to say thank you for agreeing to spend some time with me this afternoon. I'm excited to learn more about your organization. I'll certainly share with you more about our experience and capabilities as it relates to your specific business. But before we get started, I'm sure you have some questions about me and my company. Just to let you know, we're based in Houston. We've been in business for about 6 years, and we work with clients like ABC and XYZ to help them optimize the performance of their sales force and increase their sales productivity. I've been with the company since it started, and as the president, I'm responsible for the overall business success. Obviously, you spoke with David on my team last Tuesday. I understand he shared with you some high-level information about our company on that call. I want you to know I met with David, and shortly afterwards, David's a girl in this scenario, she briefed me on the information you were able to share with her as well. So that was very helpful. Thank you. Now, I've answered their question, who am I, where have I come from, what am I there to talk about? Now I want to try to get into their business. So the best way to do that is to have these your discovery questions prepared. The goal is to get the prospect talking at this stage. You're going to ask questions. I want you to listen and learn. Again, ideally, you'll spend probably the first half to 2/3 of the call listening and learning at this stage. And as I mentioned before, resist the temptation to start solving the problems as you're hearing them come up in your conversation. It's our instinct when we hear a problem, I know exactly how to fix that. Stop. Just make a note and keep asking questions and keep talking. So you'll want to ask prepared questions that have been well thought out, that are open-ended, and you're trying to get that discussion started. Again, I would tell you, don't ask direct qualifying questions at this point. You're setting the tone for the meeting, and you're putting yourself in control of the dialogue. By asking direct, close-ended qualifying questions, you're not going to get the type of conversation you want, and you have a tendency to get forced into selling your solution earlier than you want to. So example, like a bad question might be, why are you considering making a change to your CRM? Okay, so I'm coming right out of the gate with the question. Although it's an open-ended question, I'm painting a very narrow picture about what I'm going to be able to talk to them about. Maybe I am there to sell CRM, but I really want to sell them a way to improve the overall effectiveness of their business. So I need the conversation to be bigger, and I need the scope of the conversation and the scope of what my solution can do to be larger. Obviously, I don't sell CRM. Maybe this is a question that Craig has coached his sales reps not to ask, but we want to stay big, we want to stay broad, and then we want to drill down deeper into the areas that are important to us. So Here's an example of a question I like to use. I like to call it a clarifying question or to clarify something. So, before we get started, I was reviewing my my notes, or I was reading your quarterly report, and I saw that you work with XYZ. Can you tell me more about that? Can you explain how your group supports this? Would you mind elaborating on that briefly? I start with, I've done some research. I've prepared for this call, just so you know, I'm patting myself on the back a little bit here, but very subtly. I want them to know that I'm taking this meeting seriously. I've done some preparation. I understand a little bit about your business from what I was able to learn in my research. And I know something about what's going on here, and I want you to share with me a little bit more about that. And get them to talk about something that's a priority within the business. Another way I like to start a conversation is through a qualifying question, but a more subtle qualifying question. Maybe before I get started, I read your profile on your website, and I understand your title as the Chief Operating Officer. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind telling me a little bit more about your responsibilities and how you're involved in this particular area of your business. We're trying to help you understand their motivations and their priorities as it relates to your solution. So you're looking to try to uncover, how this person is aligned with your specific solution. Sometimes if that's super crystal clear, you sell an accounting software, you're talking to the CFO. Okay, that's fine. But we want to so maybe you wouldn't ask that question in that circumstance. But maybe you sell an accounting software and you're meeting with the CEO, or you're meeting with the CFO, or you're meeting with an accounting manager. It may make sense to say, how are you involved in this? And I want to know more about what your responsibilities are. Okay? And then here's my generic fallback. Something's gone dreadfully wrong, and I wasn't able to prepare for the meeting like I wanted to opening. So like I mentioned before, I'll take you through our capabilities today, but I hope you wouldn't mind if we started by asking you to give me a quick high-level overview of your business. I find that websites don't always tell the real story of the business. Would you mind? So I give them an indication, maybe I've done some research, but I'm not sure if I believe that your website is really representing your business accurately. And I find that when I ask the question this way, if for some reason I wasn't able to prepare thoughtful questions like I always hope to do, by asking this question, I usually can get a good conversation started, and it usually starts with, yeah, we need to update the website. It doesn't really reflect what we're doing as well as we'd like it to today. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing, or how we work, or where we're headed. And that's a great conversation to get started. All right, so we want to keep the conversation moving. So I like to use the old grade school 5 W's and an H. I want to try to dig in and ask the prospect to elaborate more on an area that I thought was interesting, or a comment that they made that could be the beginning, just a little sliver of understanding about a problem that's going on there. And the best way to do that is just by asking simple follow-up questions. Some examples might be, who wants that fixed? What does it cost to the business whenever that happens? Where do you think the problem started? When does it need to be completed by? Which is a great question. Why hasn't that been changed yet? This has been going on for a long time. Can you tell me why that hasn't been changed yet? How have people tried to fix this in the past? Is this something you guys have been working on for a long time? What are some of the things that you've tried? It might be helpful to write the questions in the margin of your notes. I know that's what I do. Before I go into a sales meeting, I literally will write who, what, where, when, why, how in the margin of my notes. And that's just to give me a quick little, inspiration to ask another question. I look through as I'm listening to them talk, I'm thinking that's really interesting. I want to hear more about it. And I look at that list and I go, who, what, where, where did you do that first? Where are you hoping to expand to? It just inspires me to ask one more question. Really, I like to say that the gold and the money in sales is made after the second question. If you can get 2 follow-up questions asked on a particular line of thinking, you are going to get that prospect to share with you things that they never expected to share with a potential vendor, just by asking great questions and following up those questions with some of these 5 W and H questions. I like to have a few kind of in the bag questions that I like to ask, that I'm just really comfortable asking, and I may jot those down in my notes as well at the top of my page. So if I get stuck, I have something to fall back on. But I want to keep the conversation going, and I want to keep asking questions. I can't start selling yet. I still need to understand. So then the real power here happens whenever we start trying to align our strategy, and our solution, to those problems that we're uncovering, either opportunities or pain points. I'm starting to work in my head, how is that a problem I can help them fix? And how am I going to help them fix that problem with the solutions that I have available to me to offer them? And I'll just put in a little quick note here. I've included my email address. I've got a cheat sheet that my team uses for questioning. It's kind of a conversation starter list of good open-ended questions that I coach my team to use when they're talking with prospects for our clients. If you'll send me an email and just put combo in the subject line, I'll shoot that over to you. It's just a down and dirty, couple-page Word document, but it can be helpful just to get you started in that process of thinking about great questions to ask. All right, so then we get into the vision engineering. This is where we turn this from an interview into a sales meeting. But we're going to do this at the second half of the meeting if we've done our jobs the right way. So I usually would start by identifying those 2 or 3 significant problems that I've uncovered. Make sure that I understand the issues that are related to that, and start trying to engineer that vision for the prospect. I've got to help them now understand and agree, first, that it is a problem, and secondly, that the solutions that I have available to me might be the answer to those problems. I would usually make that transition with a phrase, something like, so thanks for sharing that information with me. What I heard was that you have 3 significant challenges today. The first is A, the second is B, and finally you mentioned C. As you were discussing your challenges, with the first issue, I was reminded of the work that we did with ABC client. They had a similar issue, and then I might explain what that issue was. Does that sound familiar to you? Can you relate to that? Is that something that resonates with you? And I'm going to get some buy-in that, yeah, that is our problem. You picked it out. That is a problem for us. So great, And then I explained how we worked with them to solve that issue with our solutions. Once we've had that discussion, and I'm getting nods, and they're saying, yeah, I can see how that would work, I move on to the next issue. Okay, now the other thing I heard was this problem number 2. And let me tell you a little bit about our experience working with businesses like yours that were experiencing that problem and some of the things that we did to help them. And we go through that same process again of helping them A, acknowledge that it's a pain, and B, aligning my solution to that problem as a resolution or a fix to the problem. Here's an important point. Stick to the pains that you've identified. Stick to the problems that you've uncovered. Okay, well, one common mistake that I see salespeople do at this stage, even if they can get to this point, they've had the discipline to resist selling, and now they're at the point they've isolated the 1, 2, 3 pain points, and I'm starting to engineer a vision for them about how we can help them. The temptation is to fall back to the value proposition that your marketing department has given you, the thing that they told you that everyone has a problem with. And so this is a problem that everyone is experiencing, so everyone would like to hear about this, and everyone would want to, should consider buying your product or service just on the merits of its ability to solve that problem, this common problem. That's not important. If that was important, it would have come up during the conversation with them. You would have found a way to uncover an acknowledged pain that that's a problem for them. Your tool may be able to do 900 things. You've just found 3 problems that you can fix. Concentrate on those acknowledged pain points and talk to them about how you're going to solve the problem. And don't go into a big, long discussion about all the other things that your tools can do and all the other great things that you've got in your bag. There'll be a time for that. Right now, stick to their problems and how you're going to help them solve their problems. That's how you become a consultant versus a quote-unquote salesperson. And then you're going to try to confirm that they're open to considering an alternative solution, or your solution is a way to solve that problem. As you present the potential solutions to each of the challenges that you've uncovered, you should be checking for agreement and alignment along the way. Does that make sense? Can I see your business? Can you see your business taking those steps? If you could demonstrate, how an investment would be recovered in, say, 6 months, would the business entertain that solution? A lot goes into presenting your solution during this phase of the meeting, but you've got to understand the problem. You've got to get agreement to the problem. You've got to explain how your recommended solution is going to solve that problem for them. Quantifying the impact of your solution on their problem is a really difficult thing to do. It's very possible to do, and I attempt to do that on every single discovery meeting. But that's a giant discussion that we can maybe set up a whole other webinar to talk about that. But at a high level, you're trying to uncover the cost of that problem, and then you want to present your solution in terms of how it eliminates that cost, whether it's an opportunity cost or it's a fixed cost, whether it's a safety cost or whatever the cost is. You want to try to help them quantify that. If we solve this problem, our solution will pay for itself in 6 months. Is that an investment the business would want to make? If you can get it into those terms, the power of your presentation goes up several notches. So, double check BANT. So everyone knows, everyone on this call has probably heard of BANT before. Budget, authority, need, time frame. There's a lot of different ways to quantify an opportunity or to validate or qualify an opportunity. I think BANT is just a simple, easy way to do that. But I'm surprised at how many salespeople may know it intellectually, but don't know how to get to these questions within the context of a discovery call. So I thought I'd take a couple minutes just to kind of talk about that a little bit. When you're asking those questions, you're making notes about budget, authority, need, time frame. You're making these notes as the person's talking in the first half of the meeting. So you've already hopefully uncovered all these things within the context of a conversation, so that you don't have to ask direct questions, but you do want to validate these things that you've uncovered. And the ones that you're still missing, sometimes you just have to ask the question outright. And again, that's another thing that's going to separate the good salespeople from the great, is their ability to not shy away from these things and to be able to ask these questions in a way that gets a positive response. Salespeople are notorious for not wanting to ask the budget question. They feel like it's a little bit, it's too early, or it makes them uncomfortable. I had a friend say it's kind of like asking for a W-2 on a first date. It is in some ways, but it can be done in a way that's tasteful and done in a way that's that puts you in a positive light. Sometimes I like to ask questions like, if our solution can solve problem 1, 2, and 3, that will require an investment by your company. Are you prepared to make an investment of, say, X amount of dollars to solve those problems? Or the subtler way I mentioned before is to present it in terms of an ROI. If I can solve those problems, if I can save you guys $100,000, our solution will pay for itself in the next, 2 years. Is that something your business would entertain? to get these problems solved? Does that seem like a reasonable expense or investment to make to solve that problem? I want to get them talking about that. I want them to say, yeah, I think so, or I can tell you right now there's no way. And then I've got to figure out how I'm going to overcome that objection. How can I help them find the money? What am I going to do? There's a lot of different strategies for that we don't have time for, but we want to have that conversation. We want to determine the authority. As you gain alignment on the vision you're creating for them, you need to identify who has the authority to sign off on the investment required. Would this decision be made by a group? Or my favorite way to ask the question is, besides yourself, who else will be involved in making that decision? That gives that person who is maybe not the final decision maker an ability to save face by asking that way. Well, I'm involved, but the CEO would probably be involved as well. Okay, that tells me everything I need to know. This person likely doesn't have the authority to make the decision, but I didn't rub his nose in it by asking the question, are you able to make this decision? And have him have to say no, or even worse, lie and say yes, and I end up selling to the wrong person. So then we've got need. We talked a lot about need, uncovering need. So, confirm the pain points. Look, if they haven't confirmed that these are problems for them, it's not a solution yet. You're not going to. They won't consider your solution at that point. Then the last thing is time frame. So, time frame can be difficult. Here's something I see a lot of salespeople do. Whenever they bring back an opportunity, I might have a meeting. It's a great meeting. They have a real problem. I talked to the decision maker. They've got money lined up for this. And I say, great. Well, when do they want to do it? He says, as soon as possible. How many times as salespeople have we heard a prospect say, as soon as possible? As soon as possible is not an answer to that question. That should not be an acceptable answer to you. The best way to go around or to figure out that that's what the real answer is just ask a simple question. What happens if we don't do it right away? So that's one question. As a sales manager, that's the first question I ask. If a salesperson tells me they said they want to do it right away, I say, what happens if they don't? You need to know the answer to that question. If you don't know the answer to that question, it's as good as not knowing anything. So one of the other ways to counteract is as soon as possible or we're ready to go right away is just pick a date. Okay, great. So how does July 15th sound? How does August 15th sound? Well, yeah, that sounds good. And now you'll start to see in their tone either that seems like really fast or, yeah, that's perfectly okay. Well, great. If we're going to do this by August 15th, how long will you need to review the contracts if I send them over to you? Oh, we can get that done. It'll probably take us a week. Oh, okay, great. So I would need to get those to you by August 7th in order for you to get a decision by August 15th. Does that sound right? Yeah, it does. Great. Well, it's going to take me probably a week to put that together. We start backing into a timeline and documenting a timeline for how this decision is going to be made. And now you've got a real time frame to work from. All right. Next steps. So we've just got a couple more things. I've got about 5 minutes left, I think. So securing the next steps, don't accept we'll get back to you. Give me a call next week. Don't accept that. Just don't. You need to pin down a date and a time frame for when the next step will be taken. So we'll get back to you. How about I call you next Thursday? Will that give you enough time to look at this? Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, I'll call you Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and write that in my calendar. Would you like to send me to send you an invitation so you have that on your calendar so you can expect my call then? Sure, that'll be fine. Get it nailed down. I'll get back to you as a deal killer. It'll extend your sales cycles. It can kill your deals. So try to get all the players in the room for the next meeting. That's another really important step. Try to get the technical buyers, try to get those critical users, business influencers, the financial decision makers. Any of those people that are really going to have influence over your ability to close this deal, try to get them in the room for the next meeting. And I'll share with you a pro tip, if you will. Look for those dissenting voices. Figure out who in the room has the most to lose by your by that company choosing your solution. Who has the most to lose? Figure out who they are, and then work to set up offline meetings, separate one-on-one meetings with them to help get them aligned and get them on the same page with you. Sometimes that's easy to do. You just have to answer more questions for them, and you need to do it in a way that doesn't threaten their political, influence within an organization. So they may not feel comfortable in that meeting, in that discovery meeting setting, saying, I have a real problem with this because I think my life is going to get a lot harder if we choose to do this. They're not likely to say that. But a power user, a key employee that's going to be using the system in some cases, or going to be engaged with this solution directly, can undermine the opportunity easier than anyone else. Because let's face it, it's easier for a company to say no than it is to say yes. So most deals start from the position of, I'm trying to figure out a way to say no to this. And you've done a great job of removing all those obstacles and setting up a solution that works and can benefit the business. That one person in the back of the room that says, you know what, I really think we don't have the time to do this right now. I really think I don't have the resources to support this. Or whatever excuse they're going to use to try to undermine the opportunity, you need to figure those things out. And the best way to do that is to do that one-on-one with them and work in parallel while you're working with the decision makers. So you're going to close the meeting, finish on time, always thank them for time, reiterate that you're confident your solution is going to help them solve their business issues or challenges, restate the action items for both sides, and then exit stage left is how I can put it. And then our last couple minutes, I want to talk about follow-up activity. Again, another way where salespeople really make their money. People are being sold to, your decision makers are used to salespeople not following through. So they're used to making commitments in a sales meeting and thinking, no one's ever going to hold me to that. This guy probably won't even call me back. He's not going to follow through on the deliverables and do the follow-up that he should. He's not going to handle my objections. He's not going to send me the information that he said he was going to send me. So yes, I'm saying I agree to this, but in reality, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, nothing's probably going to come of this because this guy's going to drop the ball somewhere, and he's going to make it really easy for me to just say no. So what I always suggest you do is first, next day, make a quick thank you call. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with me yesterday. I really enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot about your business. I'm working right now on a follow-up plan in what I call, a follow-up letter that will outline everything we discussed, talk about some of the decisions we made in the room yesterday, and I'm going to, kind of itemize the solutions that I'm going to recommend for you. And then I'm going to start working on that letter. That letter needs to go out in the next 2 to 4 days after the meeting. And this is a pretty involved project. When I first started writing these letters, it took me a couple hours to write them and to write them right. But when I sent these letters and I send them consistently, deals happen faster. And even when I don't win deals, I win a lot of goodwill with the client because they're so impressed with the thoroughness of my follow-up. So what should that letter look like? The first paragraph should be understanding their present situation. Just put it down there in black and white, what you learned from them about what they're doing today, what their current situation is. Next paragraph, what do they want their future to look like? What is that future state? What is the desired state? What would that look like if everything was working the way that they wanted to? Try to resist kind of talking about your product here. Again, I'm just talking about their business. What do they want it to look like? Next paragraph. Now I talk about my recommendations. So here's how we're going to help you achieve that future state with our solutions. solution 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Any budget or time frames that need to be considered. So what I understood their budget was for the project, what we agreed to was their timeline for how they would make a decision and when they would want to implement or start. Then we're going to confirm your understanding of the decision process. You told me that you would once the proposal was done, I'd present it to you and the CFO. Once we got past that stage, it would go to a board of directors for a final decision. They meet once a quarter. The next meeting is October 2nd. You would present it to them at that time. They'd make a decision, and we could get started. Just put down in black and white what you understand the decision process to be. And then finally, any next steps that are still outstanding. Things that maybe they said they were going to send you, things they were going to do for you, things that you still owe them. Maybe it's setting up another meeting, maybe it's sending over materials, maybe it's scheduling a demo or something like that. What are the next steps that are still outstanding? The whole point of this follow-up letter is to do what I like to call chuck the wheels. What we're trying to do here is to say, this is what we've already agreed to. There's no reason to roll backwards here. The most frustrating thing, the thing that slows more deals down, is when you go in for that proposal meeting thinking that you had agreement on certain things, and they say, well, I'm not really sure if we want to do it that way. I'm not really sure if we agree that that's a priority. Well, we talked about that. You said that it was. I wrote it in a letter. You read the letter. You sent me a note back saying, thank you for the letter. I agree. I think we've got alignment. And now I'm here presenting. So if you do those steps, the chances that they're going to try to move the goalpost on you at that stage has been minimized. Yeah, sure, it'll still happen, but we're trying to minimize the opportunities for that to happen. Wow, I feel like I'm going 100 miles an hour. So here's my contact information. Folks, I really appreciate your time. Mike Verity again. Pro Sales Connection is my business. That's how to get in touch with me. My email address is right there. Again, if you'd like my cheat sheet on follow-up questions, again, just shoot me an email and put combo, short for conversation, in the subject line, and I'll be happy to just fire that over to you whenever when I get it. Anyway, thank you very much. I think Craig has one more thing to wrap up.
Yeah, yeah, Mike, thank you very much. That was really great. And just real quick, a couple of questions that were asked by a lot of people. First one here, based on your follow-up letter discussion, which I think was great. A lot of people asking, is that an email or a printed letter?
It's an email, but however, oftentimes I will write it as a Word document and attach it to an email. So I create a document in and of itself that can be shared and passed around and forwarded to people within the organization to get alignment.
Yep, that's good. That's good. And then also a lot of questions about how to balance or how to decide how much time should you be spending up front preparing for the meeting. You talked about kind of personalizing and customizing a lot of the presentation and materials that you bring to the table. How much time should you put into that?
That's really a decision based on the value of the meeting. If you're going to close 2 deals this year for $1 million each, and you're going to get 10 opportunities to present this year, I'm probably going to spend a week preparing for it. If I've got 10 meetings this week and my average deal is $5,000, maybe I'm going to spend a half an hour preparing for it. The key is prepare appropriately, but prepare. Have some questions written down. Once you get in the habit of doing this, you can shorthand the whole thing. You'll know what questions typically work for your customers, and you'll be comfortable asking them, so it takes a little less creativity to write those.
Right, right. Well, really, really great stuff. This is the kind of thing that everybody can benefit from. So thank you very much, Mike, for presenting this today. And just to remind everybody, you will get an email tomorrow with a link to a recording of the webinar, the slides. There's a lot of people asking for Mike's contact information, and I'll make sure that that's in the email that you get. And also, be sure and register for our next webinar How to Build a Value Proposition that Generates Leads. That's going to be presented by Michael Halper of Sales Scripter, and that'll be on August 8th, Wednesday at the same time, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 11 a.m. Pacific. So be sure and register for that. You can go to the Sales Growth Hub site right now and do that. It's under events. So we're right here at the top of the hour, so thanks, Mike, for getting us out on time. Appreciate everybody's time and attention. We know you're all very busy, and we really appreciate you joining us today. And as Mike suggested, if you have any questions for him, reach out to him directly. And as I mentioned, you'll be getting an email from the Sales Growth Hub here tomorrow. So thanks, everybody, and have a great afternoon. And thanks again, Mike.